The views, comments, and opinions of the following program do not necessarily reflect those of Morris Media Studios, MorrisMediaLive.com, or its affiliates. Listener discretion is advised.
Good evening and welcome to the Millennial Journal. I am so excited. We have been on hiatus a bit, and so we're just so grateful to be back with you this evening. And joining me is Gee and Joclyn, who are both millennials.
Hello,
and of
hello.
course,
Hi.
I'm a boomer. You're millennials, right?
Yes.
Well, it depends on who you ask, I think. Some people say we're on like the cusp, but yes, we'll represent the millennials
ladies,
today.
Thank you.
I get to do something a lot of boomers don't get a chance to do, and that is to sit and really talk with millennials and really get to understand them and hopefully help them to understand us a little better. Because ladies, it's all about communicating, right?
Absolutely.
Yes, especially nowadays.
So, Gina, I think you were going to choose the topic for tonight.
Yeah.
Are you ready?
I am.
Okay.
It's G. It's short for Gibran. Sometimes it gets a little lost in translation, but it's just G is my name. So today, I wanted to talk about something obviously that's on everybody's mind. It's everywhere. You can't get away from it. Is the movement, the protesting, the riots, Black Lives Matter, us trying to, still push forward with all this stuff that's going on and all these killings and all these just atrocities that are happening across the country, across the world. And I feel like we need to really have a discussion between the older generations that have been fighting for this for way longer than we have, even though it's not that long ago that the fight started. And, my age group that still we're barely coming into adulthood and starting to really realize that this is like a real thing, that it's not just something that our grandparents and our parents talked about, and trying to figure out how we can come together in a conversation rather than an argument or a debate, and really let the younger generations understand how important their voices. It's not over. It's not even close to being over. We can act like it is, and we can celebrate Juneteenth, and we can have a good time, but it's not over. So, I think it's something that really we need to, really dig deep into so that these kids can really understand more than we did. Definitely, yeah.
I think my biggest question would be, what do you see as the biggest challenge that we're facing today? I know the police brutality, but that has to be an underlying situation or problem there. So as young people who maybe haven't had to experience some of the things that I've experienced, and I'll share with you a little later, what do you see as the biggest challenge today?
I would say, in my opinion, I think the biggest challenge would be just overcoming whatever systemic discrimination or things that you face in your everyday life. Some people come into contact with that a little bit more often than others, depending on, the type of employment that you're in or the type of area, demographics that you're in. But I think everyone, any person of color has a daily struggle. Even for some people, it's just getting out of bed. It might be just walking to the bus stop. Or once you get to work, your coworkers saying discriminatory things to you, or, just being at a disadvantage for that. So I feel like everyone in some sense has experienced it. I don't think there's any person of color that's never gone through some sort of discriminatory practice or felt left out in some sort of way. So I think it's something very common, but not as talked about as it should be. And I think a lot of people are dealing with a lot of pain and, just confusion of a lot of things that they're not able to make sense of exactly.
Okay. Joclyn?
And just to bounce off of what you said of like an everyday struggle, I feel like a real issue that really doesn't get talked about is how like we deal with so many things every day, like whether it's like your neighbor being racist to you, or it's like something very like slick that might get said to you from like a coworker who like, and you feel like you need to code switch, or like you're in an uncomfortable environment where people may not know that you're a person of color. You can pass for something else. And I feel like having to get used to that kind of discrimination and like that kind of just like
the passive.
Yes, that to me is like a big mental struggle that I feel like people are yes, we need to focus on the big things. We need to focus on people dying. We need to, like the big things that we see, but all of those little tiny pieces every single day that play on you, whether you're in class and you're like a 5-year-old and you're one of 3 black kids in your class, or you're one of 3 brown kids in your class, or your whole school, or like those things I feel like we don't even touch on when they're kids. Because I can't even tell you how many conversations have we had with people that we're just now finding out at 30-something years old, like, oh yeah, I was only I didn't know white people existed because I only went to such and such school until I was however old. And I'm like, you didn't know that, you didn't go to school with people that weren't like black till you were what? You know what I'm saying? And then or vice versa.
I think what you have to understand is that, for instance, I grew up in Texas and it was segregated. No, I didn't go to school with white kids. The only time our communities were segregated, our schools were segregated, everything was segregated. But we knew that they were across town.
Yeah, and you knew they existed.
Were rules. There were certain places we couldn't go and certain things we couldn't do. In the movie theater, they sat down, we sat up. But the difference is we had a community who embraced our blackness, who encouraged us. And so I didn't feel that same kind of, until, of course, I was basically an adult on my own before I felt the kind of racism that you are speaking of. But to have a black community, we really gave up something doing integration. Yes. And I'm not saying it was a bad thing, but we did give up something, because during that segregated time, my teachers were black. My dad was a minister. The people who, all the professionals in my neighborhood, all the teachers were black. The athletes were black. Everybody was black like me. And not saying that all black people got along, but I didn't experience the same kinds of things that you're describing.
You got to grow up with a bigger sense of community.
How it could really, really affect you in a negative way, because, of course, it started to affect us because we finally realized that there were certain things that we had to fight for. And segregation was one of those, and we thought, and I'm not saying it was a bad idea, but all those black businesses disappeared. Yes. Those black teachers disappeared. When I left my wonderful community and went to the first integrated school, there was 3 black kids in my class, like you just described for the first time. But I had something that had been instilled in me for years that they couldn't tear down.
See,
I'm not going to say I didn't get into some,
of course. No, of course.
It wasn't like they could take a word or something and stab me in the heart, because I had that shelter.
Yeah, you had a long time of experience with that community to be able to, feel powerful within your experience and just being there in general, and not feeling like you and the other 2 kids are the only 3 black people in the world, Yes. But how would you say, did you feel like the 3 of you in that class, did you guys connect in any way because you were the only 3 kids? Were you guys alienated as a group, or what was that experience like for you?
There were 3 in my class. My sister was 4 in the whole school at the time.
Wow.
And no, what happened was, it's a game, and they're still playing the same game today. What happened was I ran track. Before I left Texas. I ran track when I went to New Mexico. And plus no one could beat me, right? So what do they do when they find someone that has something that they want, or they embrace you? So they would embrace me, and then they would try to down some of the other ones.
Gotcha. You were the example,
or the token.
That didn't work either. But that's kind of way the game is played. You're okay. It's them.
I have a black friend.
Well, she can run. Hey,
right. Like, he's so
medals.
strong. He comes and helps me move.
So they're not I mean, look at the athletes or look at certain people who are embraced even today. The athletes, the actors, it's because they know that they can, it's not all about loving Black people or loving them, but, they bring something to the table. So I really, when I hear young people talk about how those fears really affect them, that's the part that really gets to me, because we should never let another human being inject that kind. Now, physical pain is different.
Mm-hmm.
Knee on my neck, that's physical.
Yes.
But for someone to think that they're better, and I deal with that all the time. I've been a corporate trainer, worked in corporate America. I'm a speaker, coach. I've written 8 books. I'm out there. So yeah, I do get discrimination, but
you have to.
You just
because they can't take it away from me.
No.
Now, when they're in power, it's different. And if you're in college somewhere, it may be different. I went to Cal State Northridge. So
Me too.
What it can be like. What are you guys going there?
I did. I graduated.
This is where we clap on.
Right. Matadors.
Okay, good. Yeah. So I don't know how it is today.
Yeah. It's pretty diverse. It's kind of a commuter school considered now. So it's a lot of people that go in and out, and then they have the, typical dormitory living, but it's not as much of the same experience as like a UCLA or, a big university that is like a college town type of setup. So for me, I loved it. It still was like a very big sense of community, and it was like just far enough for me to feel kind of independent, but not too far to be like scared. And I knew my parents aren't gonna come to the valley, and that's too far. That's not anywhere in their direction. So it kind of worked out, but it was a great experience for me. So it definitely widened my views, education wise, and just, network and meeting people. So that was a nice experience for me.
That's good. That's good. Mm-hmm. For me, choosing Cal State Northridge actually was another way of advancing myself. I actually went to college as a divorced mother of 2 daughters. Got married right out of high school. You have the high school sweetheart think it's going to last forever, right? And then ended up 5 years, 2 kids later, divorced, living in Los Angeles. We had moved to LA by then. And there was a program called WIN, Women in Need. And their goal was to help women like me, who was divorced with children, but wanting to go to college. And WIN only had a limited amount of money for our community, and it was gone, right?
Right.
I had a friend, and she wasn't Black, who said, come out here. They haven't given it all away yet.
Wow.
So, so sometimes we can find ways of having it advance us, right?
Yes.
Because they paid for your books, your child care, your gas.
Wow.
Nice.
That kind of stuff. And it was called, I'm sure it doesn't exist today.
I think they have something.
I won't tell you how long
that.
ago that was.
I'm like, me neither.
It was called WIN. Is WIN still around? Winning in Need?
I'm not sure if it's exactly that program, but I do know that they have something like that. I don't know if it's specifically for single women still. It might just maybe be low income or something like that. But I know that they do have like an apartment style housing that they have set up for people that are in those certain programs. So I think there's some that are like a student worker type thing. Another thing are like low income, and possibly, like you said, the women in need. So I think they still do offer something like that. It probably is a bunch of hoops you gotta jump through, but
Didn't have to jump through a lot of hoops once I changed my address to her address.
See, that's what you had to do.
Because it was in our community too, but it was limited. Or
Of course.
maybe the demand was so much greater. It could be one of those things. All I know is they ran out of money really fast. Yeah, so
Well, at
I
least you
was
got
like,
to take
okay.
advantage.
Right.
So-
Well, that was
so-
a blessing in disguise,
Yeah,
definitely.
definitely.
Yeah. And I think sharing that story is to say, I'm hoping, because we did go through a lot. My grandparents, my parents went through a lot. And when I'm talking to young people, I kind of tell them that our parents, when you think about slavery, they were buried 20 feet under the ground. But
Wow.
they didn't stop digging. They dug, and then they dug. They didn't dig their way out, but they were no longer 20 feet. Maybe they were 18 or 16 feet under. And then that next generation would come along doing Jim Crow, and they would dig, and they would dig, and they would dig. And maybe they didn't get out either, but they were not as low as they started.
Exactly.
And then that next generation, my parents, digging, because why? They didn't want us to have to dig so hard.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they got their head above, just outside the ground, so that we could be above ground.
Mm-hmm.
You guys are above ground.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Walking
Yes,
around.
I'm not taking anything away from the
Definitely.
challenge, because it's still difficult.
Yeah.
But thank God they never stopped digging.
Yes.
Thank
Yeah.
God they didn't give up and say, what's the use? And so
Yes.
now we have strong young people who are out there, and they're digging in a different way.
Yes.
They're, and you know, and you're still going to have to fight for it. Unfortunately, you know, my kids, my grandkids, we still have to fight for it.
Yeah.
We're still
Yeah,
gonna fight.
and I congratulate you for still wanting and having the energy to fight for it.
Especially the ones that don't even really realize, like you said, how the fight has really been going. Like
Right.
there's a whole group of people that are like, oh, you know, it's okay, or like we're coming so far, and it's like we still need to keep going. Don't stop the momentum. Like keep posting, keep showing up, keep writing these employers, keep blasting these people, keep exposing people that need to be exposed. Like we don't ever this momentum has been going on for so long. Now I feel like it's picking up, like now
Definitely.
the younger generation, I feel like that the people that are being active are getting younger and younger and younger. So if we don't keep them informed and let them know that like you're fighting the fight that your grandparents fought, and it's that important, you know what I mean? Like they really need to keep it going. And I think it's up to us to really make them understand why, especially with this clown in the White House. This is like the best time to
Compliment.
It was
Right.
okay. Yeah, you know, clowns have
that's
nice
still-
makeup.
right. They're funny.
Yeah, they're funny. So, but yeah, I definitely feel like we need to keep digging, and you know.
Yeah.
Something I'd like to ask the two of you, since you are millennials, because when I talk to millennials about boomers, mostly what I get is they think they know everything. They won't listen. And this is what I get from boomers about millennials. They think they know everything.
Right.
They won't listen. So I'm not sure who's not listening to whom. But what do you- what do you
Nobody's
think?
listening
What do
to
you think?
anybody.
They think they know everything. They won't listen. So what do you think about that?
I think that comes from, I think the older you get, the less people you believe, honestly. I think that just comes with
Really?
I feel like I'm already at that stage myself, just about certain things before that I felt to be true or were so passionate about that now I don't even care, or I'm onto something else. But I think, the millennials feel like they've either listened to their parents or saw, or like they already know what's going on because of what they saw as opposed to experience. While as a baby boomer will be like, well, I did it. I saw it and I've done it. And this is why I'm telling you why you should do A, B, or C. But, when you only see part of it for yourself, you don't see the end result. So I think the baby boomers they're able to see that reward at the end, or the light at the end of the tunnel, whereas millennials are still kind of making their way down the tunnel to get to that light. And eventually, whatever is for you at the end of that will be different for each person, but it's just a journey for each person. I think in its own, regardless of age, you just get a little bit more comfortable with the journey, I'd say.
I think that kind of like what you said, the older you get, the less you believe. But then the younger you are, it's harder to believe as well, because you're
not convincible.
Yeah, you're more skeptical about everything. But I feel like baby boomers tend to be more, like you said, matter of fact. I've been through it. I know. I experienced it. It was a minute ago. Don't try to tell me that didn't happen. I was there. And I feel like millennials are kind of like, okay, yeah, that happened, but like I feel this way. And I feel like millennials, and a little like we're, because of social media, because of Google, because of like the internet is
so much access.
You have so much access to so much more information that it's harder, I feel like, to convince a millennial of something, because they'll be real quick to be like, wait, but Google said, you know what I'm saying?
I will Google anything. I don't care.
And baby boomers are like screw the Google machine. Like I was there. I can show you papers I wrote. I can give you, you see that picture? I lived through that. You're just going off of your feelings and your emotions via social media. So I think that's like a major problem why we don't necessarily speak the same languages when we're trying to convey the same like response. You know what I'm saying? Like we're trying to tell each other the same thing, or it's like we're trying to say the same thing, but it sounds like we're comparing apples and oranges when really we're just talking about fruit as a whole. And now it's become like a thing between the two. You know what I'm saying?
About Fiji and green
apples.
apples.
I feel like millennials tend to be a little sensitive.
How would you suggest a baby boomer would approach you or be open to what you are saying to them or they are saying to you? How do you suggest that would be a better way of communicating? Or do you have a suggestion that would make you feel differently than what I've heard?
I know for me, it's about delivery. So like if you're coming at me with just information in an aggressive way, like you've automatically decided that whatever I'm going to say is wrong, which is sometimes how people that are older than you can come across, where you're just like, dang, and they're like, nah. But because we're so emotional, we don't. It shouldn't be like, you know,
passionate.
Yeah,
Okay?
and we'll take it like, oh my God, you're attacking me, when really the boomers are just like, it's facts. So maybe the approach to like, I don't want to call it like sugarcoating or like dancing around, but maybe just the approach of like, well, I understand it makes you feel that way, but XYZ is why, boom, boom, boom. You know what I mean? Because millennials are so quick to be like, but, you know, and it makes me feel. So maybe boomers just need to come across a little bit differently and not be so like, look, youngster, you need to get it. You know what I mean? And we need to be more receptive of like, everyone is not your grandma talking to you. Everyone's not your mom. Everyone's got a different experience. So like, we need to be a little bit more open and stop like talking with our feelings. And I'm the most talker with my feelings. I'm a Pisces. But that's just me.
Yeah, I know, right? We're passionate. That's why I'm like, I'm not emotional.
I'm
passionate.
Just an excuse to cry.
But, you know, I think that, too, it is a generational thing, like what you're saying, because I feel like baby boomers, they've gone through certain experiences, like just in that time frame, like you were saying, to your parents and their parents and, you know, your grandparents, that they lived through some stuff. Like, and honestly, I'll say I've been blessed enough to have a pretty easy life. Like, I didn't have to really go through too many things. You know, there was 9/11. That's when I was like first starting high school. So we've experienced things, but they didn't hit close to home. Yeah. And I feel like baby boomers and generations before that, they've experienced big things. Yeah, that affected their daily life, wars, things like that my generation, we've had wars, we had that, but it's not televised like it used to be. It's not marketed. It's not, you know, as easily available. I can't touch it. It's not right here. They don't put it right in your face. So I think we are kind of detached from that reality of things affecting us. And just like they say, until it affects you, it doesn't really matter. So I think millennials have that kind of skepticism because we've never really gone through anything. Whereas a baby boomer could have the opportunity to see like history repeat itself, or, you know, going through something that you already saw maybe as a child or watched your parents or grandparents talk about. And, you know, whereas a millennial is like, oh, the Wi-Fi went out, you know, it's like, you know, or like my cell phone didn't work today and like life is over. So I think it's just a matter of circumstance for us, at least, because major things that happened in society were not really exposed to us like they used to be. And I think that kind of clouds our vision and allows us to have that freedom to not really care or not be so passionate or opinionated about certain things, because it's not even in our not even in our reality. So, you know, it makes it easier to just not care or not want to hear what someone has to say, because you don't feel like, oh, well, you don't know. To me. Yeah. And you never experienced or something like that to identify with another person, an older person that's been through that. So, I mean, honestly, young people, we should just listen and, you know, try and learn. But
But it goes both ways too, because the older generations need to learn to listen to us as well, because we're younger, and of course we need to show respect and we need to do everything. But at the same time, if we're going to listen to you, you guys have to be open to listening to us and learning how to communicate to each other, because not every millennial is going to be the same. Not every age group is going to be the same. The 20-somethings are going to be harder because they're like squirrel. They lose their attention span, you know, and then like another age group might just go off on a whole nother thing. So I think it's just going to take like people having those uncomfortable conversations and young people not being scared to ask certain questions of the older generations. Like for us to understand what's going on right now, we can only learn from the past. So if you have somebody that is in your family that you know was living through something like this back in the day, like I encourage people to ask questions, and vice versa. Like how we're having this dialogue now, I encourage like grandparents and uncles and aunts and just parents in general that have 20-something kids, or you know have younger than that, to ask them questions and figure out how they how their brains work, so that everybody can somewhat get on the same playing field with the conversation as a whole. You know,
I'm glad to hear you say that, because I do believe that there should be conversation, and a lot of times it's not happening. And no one's listening to anyone else, I guess, and then it gets lost. So I to hear both of you say that you don't trust sometimes what's being said. So that requires a relationship, a certain type of relationship. Trust doesn't just come because you're related or you know someone.
Right.
Yeah, that requires a certain kind of relationship. And so that is one thing that with this show over the last 2 years, we've attempted to build that bridge, because there was a young lady and an older lady in the market, and they were like going at it. I mean, they were just going at it. And because I do the show, I felt okay to approach them. So I did. And I asked her what their relationship was. And it was an aunt and a niece. And they were arguing over ingredients for dressing.
Oh my God.
That is controversial, though. You know how that goes.
I thought they were going to fight. I mean, and they both of them said the same thing. The aunt, you can't tell her nothing. And she's like, she thinks she knows it.
That's so funny, right?
And I said, I do a show. And I started talking about the Millennial Journal, and the young girl said, oh, yeah, I'll do it. And the other lady said, no. You know, so it requires both to be open, to be able to, and maybe not in the midst of the situation or whatever it is. But at a time when no one's angry or no one's overly excited, or to just have a conversation about something irrelevant that's not all that important to the two of you, but to be able to talk to each other. I have two, and they've been on the show actually. I have two 18-year-old granddaughters by two different daughters, and they're different as night and day. One of them is an old adult, and the other one is a kid. They're both 18.
That's so funny.
She's 12. The other one acts like she's a grandma. I mean, she's like, she just come from a space of a very matured
She's an old soul.
Right.
So no, everybody, you're right, everybody is not the same. And so it requires us to really try to communicate to a person on the level or in the space where they are. And I know I had a mother like that, you know. Yeah, she did know everything.
But I also think
she did.
That comes too with when you're a little bit older, you tend to be like, well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. You know what I mean?
I believe you can't teach an old dog new tricks.
Exactly. So I think that too.
You guys believe those things you just said? You can't.
I think
you saying someone else says that to you?
No, I'm saying that I feel like no matter what the age group is, like the older generation will always be like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, or you can't teach an old dog new tricks.
That is my saying.
And that's a barrier of communication.
Those people are not enlightened. I come from the world of if it ain't broke, break it so we can fix it.
So we can figure it out. And
that's
that's what I feel like sometimes is a wall between the younger generations and the older generations. The younger ones are like, we want to innovate, we want to change, we want to do this. I don't want a waffle, I want a crepe, I want this, I want that. And even me talking to my little brother, my little brother's only 21, and I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, you're on some whole different thing. And he's like, but I'm in the bigger scheme of things. He's like, I want to change the world. And I'm just like, what's for breakfast? Like, you're, I'm still on the waffle and you're on this whole other thing. World. And I feel like it sometimes that's just a communication barrier because the millennials are trying to do so much. And sometimes as an older person, you tend to be a little conservative in your own way, whether it's how you make your dressing or it's the, your daily routine for the day or just some of your beliefs. And someone trying to change it and someone trying to tell you like, but this is why it's still good in a conversation can just go bleh. You know what I mean? And it becomes an argument instead of a conversation.
Not trying to change the other person, but to
Yes.
listen to their viewpoint
Yes.
and make it okay not to agree with that viewpoint,
Yes.
but to be able to listen to it.
Yes.
When I'm talking to boomers about younger people, I say to them, why are you always trying to tell them or make them or push them?
Yep.
Why not share with them? Not make them feel like it has to be that way, but maybe you guys would be more open, or you can try it if it make it okay for them to share.
Yes.
Because I believe in this, and may not be true, but as a mother and a grandmother, if I want to share something with them, trust me, it's because I want to see them do better. I want them to achieve. I want them to get ahead. I do not want them to suffer.
Yes.
So, but we may not approach it the right way to be able to get that message through to you. If you feel that someone is deliberately trying to harm you, you should be in the defensive position. But if they're really wanting to share with you, I want to share with all my heart with my grandchildren, my daughters are pretty much, they're Gen X. They're Gen X. So their daughters are the daughters that are my grandchildren. So they are young adults now, so they kind of pretty much do their thing, and then they call me when they feel like they want to. And my first question to them is, are you sure you want to hear it?
Right. You sure you want to hear what I have to say?
Want to hear?
You sure you want my answer?
I want to hear it. I want to hear it. That's what they say, right?
Until they hear it.
So I've gone through that of trying to tell someone something when their ears are shut.
Yeah.
So maybe if you could share with them the way to approach you, because it's going to be different probably for even the two of you to have someone who care about you. And we're talking about people who care about you, but you can't go along with them because they're always trying to be bossy or they're always trying to shove something down your throat. Give them a way to communicate with you. And just check and see if it will work. It's like, Mom, I don't mind listening, but you're always screaming.
Yes.
Or, just say
the millennial in me is like, no deal, leave me alone.
Yeah.
Say that again.
I said the millennial in me is like, no deal, leave me alone. I don't want to hear it at all.
That's a deal breaker, huh?
Yeah, I'm like, nah, I don't even want to talk about all that.
But I hope you don't give up trying, because your generation is so valuable. And you're going to be valuable to the generation coming up behind you. And the boomers are the generation that's extinct. It's going to be easing back into retirement, whose goals and focus probably is more on retirement. We're not raising kids at this moment. The mortgage is almost paid for some people, or whatever the situation is in their lives. You are still building. The generation coming up behind you is still building. You're going to be ones out there fighting the fight that the Black Lives Matters are fighting right now, even though I worked for the Obama campaign in 2010 and in 2012. And I actually went to Ohio for a year to work that campaign. So all I'm saying to you is there are going to be things that you are going to you guys are going to take charge of, and you're going to make it happen. And it's going to be up to you, because you're the next in line behind the Gen X. You're the next in line. And I know it's not easy. I know how stubborn. Like I said, I had one. My mom, she was really they called them the greatest generation. I lost her last year at 89. So, you know, in
Is that what their name
I
is?
miss her. And I
Is
do.
that what that generation's name is? The greatest generation?
The greatest
Oh, okay.
Because they went through 3 world
Yeah.
wars.
Yeah.
1, 2, and 3, and then they went through a lot of them went through the Civil War, and it was just so many things.
Wow.
That my mom was born in 1929, so shortly after.
Yeah.
But they went through so
The
much
Depression
that,
and everything.
Yeah.
their history is one of the things that's lacking.
Yeah.
Because I had an aunt who died at 103, and we used to sit and just
Wow.
listen to her tell these stories.
Yes.
I used to think she made them up, but my
No.
grandmother said no.
Yeah.
Right. And you're
Yeah.
like, no. You're like, no, she's been telling that story for about 70 years, so
Yeah.
it's true.
It's a blessing to have them around for that long, to
Right?
hear the stories.
I'm
and
talking
hear
to
the
everybody
things.
too.
Man, the stories I heard from my grandmother,
Right.
how her mom kidnapped her from the Bay Area and literally hopped on a train and a bus and took her down to Mexico City.
Wow.
And like it was so much, but hearing those stories is just like you
don't believe it.
You don't believe it until you don't hear the stories anymore. You know what I mean? And then you're like, dang, I wish I could just hear that story one more time, or I could just get one more like the view through her lenses.
Or you asked
you know what I mean?
different question or something more detailed.
Yeah, especially for that generation, because I asked my grandma. I remember asking her, "What were you doing during when they bombed Pearl Harbor?" And she looked at me. My grandma was born in 1931. She looked at me and was like, "What year was that?" I was like, "Were you scared?" Because I was young. I didn't understand that California wasn't necessarily getting bombed, and you know what I mean. But I was like, "Were there bombs coming? Like, what was it?" She was like, "You know how I found out about the war? I was at the gas station pumping gas with your uncle and your aunt. I didn't have time to be worried about that." And I was just like, she had such a different
That's true though.
perspective of it, but like the rest of the world was like, we're at war, and she's just like, I'm changing diapers and like going to school. I mean, like taking them to school and like, you know what I mean? But just to even hear that is like, when I became an adult, I realized like, oh, she was there. Like she was there through that. She was there through
That's
all
what
that.
I had to realize too about my grandma. I was like, hey, and I would ask my mom like, wait, didn't she go through? She was alive during that, right? And the same thing though. My mom was like, she was like, your grandma wasn't worried about that kind of stuff. She had kids to raise. We were poor. Like there were bigger things to worry about. So
But
like
she was there through
those
it.
things beyond the neighborhood probably were just like, you know.
Yeah. But
You got smaller things.
There's a great documentary called "The American Negro: Many Rivers to Cross," and it goes way back and bringing you right up to the current time, even to the time of the election of President Obama and beyond. And it even for me, watching it and rewatching it after so many years, it's amazing because you start to appreciate your history and your past, and you start to understand that some people paid some really high prices.
Really?
And a lot of those people are still alive.
yes.
And they're totally ignored, like they're nothing, like they haven't been through anything. And I think a lot of times with older people, they just want to be acknowledged. Some
Right.
of them, I'm not going to say all, but sometimes they just want to be acknowledged for the accomplishments and the sacrifices. And trust me, the sacrifices were huge back in the day when we were coming up, and even when I was coming up. And I know when my mom was coming up and my dad was coming up, and they just the one of the most important things they fought for was freedom, so their children could be free, and so that their families weren't torn apart. Because there was an African American man that was interviewed on that show, and he was saying that he had kids taken out of their arms that they never saw anymore until they were grown.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my
so
goodness.
a lot of times we don't know the experience, and a lot of times they won't tell you the experience. They try to tell you the wisdom on the other side of that experience.
Yes.
Yeah. That's what I feel like
So
you
if we
miss
can
out.
just learn to talk to each other without, and that's the director of this show and myself, when we first talked about this show about 2.5 years ago, that was the goal.
Yeah.
We wanted to communicate with millennials. We wanted to open up to them. We want to be able to communicate and
Yes.
not put
Yeah.
not put anyone down,
Yeah,
not
not
for
feel
older people, not
defensive.
for younger people.
Yeah.
And you see right now, young people out there on the front line for Black Lives Matter. So I applaud them. You know,
Yay.
I was part of SNCC. My sisters were part of SNCC. That's Student Nonviolence Coordination Committee. I'm sure it's not around anymore.
It's probably
Okay.
just called
You know,
something else.
we did our share of
Yeah.
marching with the big afros.
See,
Yeah,
we need to see a picture of that.
Yeah, we
I know
do.
you got
Next
a picture
time.
somewhere.
Oh yeah, definitely. Maybe I'll send it to you. You probably
Yeah.
won't recognize me. Yeah, but it's generational, and I think one of the worst things about integration is it broke up that community tie. Integration broke up that community tie that we had, but we can still have it. You know, generational. I've gone back and looked up who my mom and dad's ancestors were in Africa. I know what tribe.
Really?
Wow.
Wow.
And then my husband helped me look up our American heritage.
Tree.
It's just, it strengthens you. These people who have a different color than us cannot make us feel bad about ourselves unless we already feel bad about ourselves. And that's what we have to work on. I wrote a book, Loving Yourself First, A Woman's Guide to Personal Power. We have to work on that certain love, that internal love for ourselves.
Yes.
So when somebody come in my face,
That's
because
her-
she
that's
might
her
be a different
personal
color,
life
and her
quote.
hair might be a little straighter, you know.
Oh yeah, dust them
But you have to
off.
get there. It doesn't come easy, and I'm not.
It's a
bragging
work in
because- but I
progress.
have done plenty of
Hey,
work.
brag.
Okay.
Brag
And
on.
self-development. Lots of work.
You need
Lots
to
of work
brag.
get
That's
there.
what I think it's about too. You got to brag. Why not? You've been living life
Well,
and experienced
but
years and things.
What I'm saying is, because I'm talking to younger women that I already have a lot of respect for. I've had a conversation. We had a great conversation yesterday, so I know how smart, how capable
Thank you.
You are, and other people know that too, whether they tell you that or not. So when you get these arrows from people whose job they think it is to make you feel bad about who you are and what you are and where you come from, and because
Hello.
your skin is another color, you have to build up from the inside out.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, you
I'm
do.
a firm
You do.
believer. You said the name of your
If you're
book
not
is
getting that pat
Loving
on the
Yourself
back,
First.
doesn't matter.
And
Doesn't matter.
I love myself first tattooed on my arm. It's been on my arm since 2008 because I went through an
Oh,
experience
good.
and I was like, you know what? I lost myself in this world, in this relationship, and I needed a reminder daily to make sure that I love myself first before I make any
good.
moves
Good
throughout
for
the
you.
day.
Good
So
for
when you
you.
said that, I was like, oh my God, she's speaking to my soul. How did she know? So yeah,
because they're I wrote that book in 1997, and I did workshops.
Wow. See, now you got to get the
I
book.
was 11.
Just last year, I was contacted by a major publisher, said, let's bring it back out. There are a lot of women out
Wow,
there.
congratulations.
Yes.
We always need that.
Yes.
That's something we all need, not just women, men.
Yes,
Of course,
definitely men.
specifically men.
Specifically men.
So,
Because
but many of them bought it, but it was always for a sister or,
That's
someone
what
Or
they
they were
said.
saying.
That's what
That's what
they
they
said.
or they were reading
That
it
was
for
okay.
them.
That was for them. They
yeah,
was by their nightstand next to them on the
definitely.
pillow.
They were needing pointers.
They're like, no, it's for
sure.
my
It's for
girlfriend.
my- yeah, no, it's not. It's for you.
But if we get to that point where we're loving us, we can love them better. And
Yeah.
if we're
Yes.
loving them and we're loving us, they can't help but love us because it's not going to be all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Once you
But it has
admit
to start
love.
with us, and it's the same for me. I think it's the same with racism. It's the same with everything. So I am just honoring you all. I'm honoring those people out there on the front line
Yes.
with Black Lives Matter. And I'm going to look to you all to continue to bring these millennials through the doors so that we can
Well,
talk
thank
to
you.
them.
Thank you.
Oh,
Yes.
And have some great conversations,
Oh,
and
yeah.
so that I'm not a parent or someone they have to listen to.
Yes.
But if they can get a nugget, you know what I'm saying, that maybe helps them or can change their lives, then I'm all for it.
Yeah.
And Dee is too. So I think that's what this show is all about.
The concept of not having like a debate on the show really made me happy because like you were saying, like having conversations, a lot of times people just get defensive and people just, you start a conversation and then it becomes a debate.
It's not fluid.
Because people just want to say their view and they're not open to listening to anything else. But you can't move forward if you sit with, box on your ears and you're just talking to talk. Like if you don't ask the questions and you don't search for the information to enlighten yourself, you're just going to stay in your own little box. And that's not, we're never going to move forward by just staying in a box and not having, like you said, the hard, real, nitty gritty conversations that can prompt maybe a debate or prompt some passion in your voice. But at the end of the day, you need to learn how to conduct yourself to have these conversations.
Or it'll prompt if you even need that person in your life. So then you can be like,
that part too.
That's not working. If we can't talk about simple stuff, why
because
talk
if we can't have a conversation about what our future is going to be like and the future of our kids and the future of whoever, why do I even need you in my future? To be honest.
And that's for anybody.
That's
relationship,
for anybody.
non-relationship, I think.
So,
And that is so true. You're very wise young ladies.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
you. And talking to the older generation or talking to each other, or I think Gen X is caught in the middle. Right? That's your parents.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, my
they're
parents
caught
are
in the
big.
middle.
Yeah, I was like,
here's the boomers.
Our parents are not young.
Mine's is the greatest generation, and one is a baby boomer. My dad is the generation before baby boomers.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And my dad is 61.
That generation that's caught in the middle between boomers and millennials, the Gen X generation.
Yeah.
I think they had it exceptionally hard.
I think it's 1969
because
to 19.
we were sold this and you all are sold this. And they're a little bit lost, a little bit more lost than it seems that the boomers were we knew. Segregated, we knew. My dad would drive for hours before he would go to a restaurant, said no colors or any of that. He protected us a lot. The fact that we lived in a segregated community and our teachers and everybody, the person that owned the funeral home, everybody, and all the businesses in our community at that time were Black-owned businesses. So I didn't experience a lot of the kind of sting that a lot of young people, and it scars them, and so we want to be able to talk about those kinds of things in a community, like Africans used to do around the fire.
Word of mouth.
I want to see the boomers have a lot to share, but you can't shove stuff down people's throat, you know. And millennials have to be open, boomers have to be open, Gen X people have to be open to receiving it. So I say to the boomers, try sharing. Just share.
Yeah,
just
open up a little more.
I'm trying to tell them what to do or boss them, and please don't criticize them.
Yeah, it's not always about right and wrong. It's just about sharing and understanding, and that's where people get lost, to be honest.
Right.
They share to be heard and listened to versus sharing to just be giving of information.
Hear their own voice.
Yeah, to hear yourself talk. So it's really important.
Yeah, well, you're gonna have those.
But
I think if you two, if you're a millennial and you can touch the lives of other millennials, I touch the lives of boomers. I touch the lives of millennials. Actually, everyone, because I'm a professional speaker as well. So I've spoken in a lot of places with a lot of people. And if you're on stage, people kind of listen to you. Doesn't mean they're going to do it. They kind of listen to you. But over the years, I've just found that being able to communicate with people on their level, having them open, and a lot of times when they come in, they're not open to receiving, but they don't want to be criticized
you don't
or
know what
put
you're
down
talking
or
about.
made to feel wrong all the time, or to feel like you're right all the time. That closes people up.
And
So,
people
but there
also
are ways to have them open up.
People also don't do that age-old saying of put yourself in someone else's shoes. You know what I mean? So I feel like millennials have kind of I've experienced it this way, and they might not necessarily want to do it because we just feel like we know everything, or because it doesn't sit like
you said that. I didn't.
speaking for the things that I know that I can sometimes be difficult with myself, and the things that I see in having conversations with other people, because I've worked in customer service my whole life. So I have conversations constantly with people I work with or people that I'm in the store with or whatever. And just, I feel like the younger generations, including millennials, are just kind of like, they don't want to put themselves in another pair of shoes. They just want you to understand what my shoes feel like. I don't want to know about, oh, those are your shoes. Oh, they don't fit. That's not my problem because I wear a 9. So, you know what I mean?
Word, right?
And it doesn't work.
What's it called?
It's being, I don't know what.
Selfish, self-first, me.
Yeah, it's selfish. So it's self-absorbing.
Is it true?
Right.
I hear a lot.
Narcissistic.
Yeah.
So self-centered.
Yeah, because they're crybabies. Like, honestly, it's like, it's a crybaby thing. It's the information is too accessible for me to prove you wrong because Google, and everything else. My astrology, so I feel this way, or I've gone through this, so oh my God, and you know what I mean. And I feel like young people love to just not put themselves in another person's shoes because we're too worried about ourselves. Like, we're too emotional and too caught up in our own little world.
I'm like, your shoes, are they vegan leather?
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? I don't know. And I feel like older people want, like you said, they want to push the information, but that's because we're like, no, why should we? Like, I'm worried about myself. And then it just becomes one big, head to the wall of nothingness. And I feel like in general, people need to remember that. Like, put yourself in and learn to be sympathetic, learn to be empathetic, learn to like get out of your bubble and think about what it's like to be somebody else in the same situation. Period.
Yeah.
I would say, in my opinion, I think for to address like the Generation X and millennials and then the boomers, I think Generation X, they kind of, for me, I feel like millennials, I'm lucky enough to have been born enough early that I know when we just had a house phone and there were no cordless phones and like
how the internet works.
Internet, the computer, dial up. Right. So I think I was, able to know what life was like before that and leading up to it. Whereas like Generation X, they were kind of in between. And then I think too, because of like the generation before the baby boomers and beyond that helped with like civil rights and just human rights, that they had to kind of tread a little bit more lightly. Like they didn't really know what was, they weren't sure that everything was concrete, what our ancestors or our, grandparents and great-grandparents had established for us. Whereas myself as a millennial, I don't really have to worry about that. I've been able to vote. I can, I can go freely and eat wherever I like. I can talk to whomever I want to talk to. It's not really an issue. No one can lock me in jail, but we're blessed enough to be able to go through that. Whereas Generation X, I feel like they were kind of stuck in between and they might not have had all the skills to be set up for what's out here now, like with the internet and everything else. Whereas in school, we were learning that in elementary and middle school, they knew the future that was coming. So they gave us, they let us put our foot in the water a little bit. Whereas the older generation, I think they still were kind of stuck in the old ways because that's what they were just used to. And then they were still getting used to the new world, like the new life that, people before us created. So I think it's great. It's awesome. I think people have to take advantage of it to, for themselves, just based on what they need, what their passions, their goals are, and, just make the best of it, because everybody's life is different. You never know what people are going through, and some things affect people differently. So like you said, just having conversations, opening up, not being as closed-minded to not listen to someone, no matter their age. Sometimes you can learn from someone younger than you, or they give you a different perspective. I always like to say you can't judge. You cannot tell someone what they've been through, or you can't judge by looking at them what they've had to experience to say, I would tell you about it, but you wouldn't be able to help me, or you wouldn't understand. But you don't know how people associate things with other things. And I think it's just about having those conversations, opening up, and being willing to, see the other side of the mirror, in essence,
Okay. Well, one thing, Gen X, they were born in 1944. They were born free. And they got vote and all those kinds of things. But discrimination certainly had not gone away.
Yeah.
But in discrimination, being out in the open, because it was illegal to discriminate in housing and employment and all of that. But that doesn't stop it from happening, and it still happens today.
Definitely.
And one of the reasons Black Lives Matter Black Lives Matter. That's why they're on the streets, because the things that the police officers are doing are not legal, but they're
Definitely
doing it.
not. And
There
people
are a lot
always,
of
the
things,
news
you know,
people
you
know
go in
it.
for a job interview, and they don't give you the job because you're Black, but they're not going to tell you that because it's illegal. It's been illegal for a long time.
And now they
So,
just judge
see,
you by
what
your
they call
name.
systemic. You've heard that word.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Systemic racism. They still use it undercover.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. And
Racism didn't go anywhere.
Trust me, we those of us in my age category know that there's a lot going on. But the fight has been consistent. It's just gone from generation to generation to generation. And in each generation, it moves a little bit further. But if you're not careful, it'll slip back.
Yeah.
Yeah, because a lot of people aren't doing it willingly. And a lot of the companies that you see coming out endorsing it, they're looking at the financial part of it.
Yeah.
Or, it's still not because they love us.
Yeah.
So, but the fight continues, and it's going to continue. And I think one of the things with especially with millennials, because I think Gen X probably started with Gen X and with boomers, not really trying to move our kids away from that and trying to protect
Suburb
them
living, moving
and
out of the
shield
city.
them and have them not experience what we experienced. Might not have been all that good of idea.
No.
But at
Right.
least the least we can do is teach. The least we can do is teach now and say, okay, these are the things that happened along the way. And if you're not careful, you will see Black Lives Matters demonstrating for what they've been demonstrating for weeks now. Going back in and taking it easy, and everything these people said they were going to do will slip right back out the door.
Yep.
And they know that, I think, and that's why they're out there so strong and so long.
And that's why the social media presence
technology
is so
helps to put it out there.
Technology is
because when
amazing
I saw
now.
them with their knee on George Floyd, I've never, as old as I am, I've never seen anything like that.
Right. And the fact that
one
there's
man
just a clear video
they're snuffing the life out of another individual.
out in the
and he's acting
street.
like it's nothing.
It's not even in private.
Yeah, in front of children, in
It's
front
not
of people.
disguised. It's not in an
everybody.
alley behind a
No.
building. It's right
And
there.
they knew they were being filmed. So
That's how I feel like they know they're justified.
Yeah.
You know?
I've
That's why they're
I've
so
never seen
comfortable.
anything like that.
Yeah.
Never, ever seen anything like that. It affected me so, and I'm sure a lot of people are out on the street now because it affected them that way. But we don't know how long that will last.
right.
Yeah.
That energy that they have now. So you really have to look at what part can I play, and especially if you have children or if someone you're responsible for, what part can I play to make sure, which a lot of parents do, that will never be my child on the ground with their knee on their neck.
Yeah.
And that's how a lot of parents, especially in my age group, would probably look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so
I'm
much.
not sure how much time we had. I didn't.
We just have a few minutes
Yeah.
now. That's what I wanted to say.
So is
Thank
there
you for-
anything the two of you want to leave me with? Because I am open to learn. I want everything I can. I know a lot of the slang. I used to look it up, and I have fun speaking with I have a friend who has two sons who are 21 and 24, and I learn a lot from them, and just love being around millennials and the director and I, just a producer, and I just, bringing together shows that can really promote you guys.
I would just say continue to be as open as you are and forthcoming with your love and your knowledge, because your approach is what makes these conversations easy, because you do exactly what we were talking about, speaking to listen and listening so that we can speak to you. It goes both ways. And if you just continue doing the work that you do and sharing the knowledge that you have with everybody, I think it's a big step in the right direction. So thank you
Definitely.
for that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
And you continue to be you.
Thank you so much. Well, it was really nice having you here with us.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm glad to be
Really
back. I've
awesome.
missed it. I really have.
Yes.
And
I look
I'm
forward
glad
to
to
our
see
next
that it's
conversation.
continuing on. And
Shout
it.
out to D. He's awesome.
I'm so used to the credits starting to roll and the music coming on, and so I'm
There it is. There it is.
Till next time.
Everybody have a good evening. Thank you, Linda.
Heaven must have known that this day would surely